Tell me about this, because then when you're an independent now.
Yeah.
So what does that say? That to me, it says that you think the Republican Party is unsavable.
Unsavable. Oh, no doubt about it.
Because otherwise you would want to stay on, right, and
Right.
reform it, but you think
It can't be saved.
it cannot be saved. I've never argued with that. I've never argued that of a false equivalency. I just said there is misinformation from both sides.
Well, sorry.
So I lived through COVID. Don't tell me there wasn't misinformation.
But there's a difference between...
I lived through stupid policies based on bad information and stifled information.
Things just got heated between Bill Maher and MSNBC's Joe Scarborough. Their late-night clash had Scarborough backpedaling so hard, he nearly moonwalked off the set. Maher, never one to bite his tongue, tore into Scarborough's baffling defense of Trump like a pro, shredding his argument with precision and a healthy dose of sarcasm. The end result? Joe looked like he suddenly remembered he had to be literally anywhere else. So what did Scarborough say to trigger Maher, and how did Maher clap back? Stay tuned, because this tea is scalding. Would you like it toned down or made even punchier?
Donald Trump said that he was going to use the military and the National Guard to arrest his political opponents. He was asked if he would back off of that.
He said no.
And he said no. In fact, he doubled down. He talked about Nancy Pelosi being evil, her husband being evil, Schiff being evil, talking about arresting them. He said he was going to execute the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he was disloyal to him. He told another chief of staff who was a general, I wish my generals were like Hitler's general.
It's just another day, and Trump derangement syndrome is still going strong. Some critics remain unwilling to accept the reality of his presidency, going to great lengths to distort his words, whether by stoking fear, misrepresenting his actions, or outright inventing claims, all in an effort to cast him as the perpetual villain. Naturally, Bill Maher had his usual take, but before we get to that, let's unpack Joe Scarborough's blatantly slanted spin on Trump's recent statements. It's a textbook case of narrative manipulation. What stands out is how Scarborough conveniently strips away the context, or worse, ignores the possible reasons behind Trump's words altogether. This kind of selective editing doesn't just mislead, it deliberately reshapes reality to fit a prepackaged storyline. The objective: stir up outrage, keep the anti-Trump narrative alive, and ensure any discussion about him is buried under layers of distortion. Want this to sound more neutral, more opinionated, or tailored for a specific audience?
There is no doubt.
There's no misinformation.
There's some disinformation from the left, but comparing it to what Donald Trump spews out every day, every week, comparing it to what Elon Musk is spewing out, unfortunately, on X, you sound like Brett Stevens now, with all due respect. It's a joke. That's a real time.
And you sound like him, who looks like Rachel Maddow. Or is
You understand what I'm saying?
I've never argued with that. I've never argued that of a false equivalency. I just said there is misinformation from both sides. So I lived through COVID. Don't tell me there wasn't misinformation.
But there's a difference between...
I lived through stupid policies based on bad information and stifled information.
But it can't matter.
That's what Zuckerberg said. He said they were forcing us not to put out.
The left has a habit of accusing Trump of exactly what they themselves are guilty of, its classic projection. As Bill Maher rightly pointed out, outlets like MSNBC have been just as responsible, if not more so, for spreading misinformation. Want examples? Take your pick. The widely debunked Russian collusion narrative pushed by Rachel Maddow, the disinformation campaign surrounding Hunter Biden's laptop, or the misleading coverage of the Fine People hoax. MSNBC has repeatedly pushed false or distorted narratives, yet what's truly concerning is their refusal to own up to these missteps. While Trump's every word is picked apart, twisted, and weaponized, false claims from left-leaning politicians or media figures are either ignored or brushed off as misunderstandings. This isn't just hypocrisy, it's a calculated strategy. It's about controlling the narrative, keeping their audience emotionally charged, and ensuring that Trump remains the ultimate villain. Because if they ever acknowledge their own role in spreading falsehoods, they'd have to admit they're no different from the man they claim to despise. And that's a reality they're not ready to face. Would you like this version to lean more towards satire, analysis, or keep the sharp tone?
You haven't changed. So you consider yourself a liberal, right?
I consider myself an old school liberal. You have to make that distinction now because, you know, the word woke, which started out as a good thing, being alert to injustice, and a lot of people get triggered by the word because when they hear it, they think of it the old meaning, which was good.
Right.
You know, stay woke. But I'm sorry, language is a living, breathing entity. Words change and they migrate and they take on a different meaning. And woke now has to answer for, or for people have just used the word to ascribe a number of extreme things on the left.
Now here's where I have to challenge Maher a bit. He downplays just how widespread the problem really is. He makes it seem like only a small slice of the left has gone off the deep end with wokeness. But let's be honest. It's not some fringe movement anymore. It's become the dominant mindset across liberal circles. From politicians and media figures to Hollywood elites, this ideology isn't just a trend, it's the playbook. And while Maher called it out, Scarborough didn't have much to offer in response, likely because, deep down, he knows Maher's not wrong. The real question is, how much longer can he keep pretending otherwise? One it sharper, more neutral, or styled for a specific platform.
I mean, Kamala's big, I think, challenge here to win over the undecided voters is to convince them that she's not part of what they suspect she might be, sort of a stealth version of the worst excesses of the left. I said there's a coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy than stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense.
Right.
That takes place on the left.
Right. So
that's why they keep running that ad about sex changes in prison. You know, like
and every football game.
Could you get every
every football game?
Could you get more third rail words into one sentence?
Exactly, that's the point. Kamala Harris would have a tough time distancing herself from the woke left, assuming she even wanted to. Because let's face it, she's not just aligned with the movement, she's deeply embedded in it. Wokeness isn't some fringe ideology whispering from the sidelines. It is the modern left. It's the mainstream. It's the establishment. It's the loudest voice in the room. Just look at the overwhelming support Harris received during her rise. Her rallies weren't filled with moderate Democrats pushing back against the extremes. They were packed with people fully embracing the ideology. Hollywood's A-listers couldn't get enough of her. Journalists pitched her softball questions like they were hosting a friendly game of t-ball. And the media? They were more than happy to gloss over anything that didn't fit the narrative. That's not the influence of a small radical fringe, that's the Democratic machine operating at full power. So let's drop the illusion that wokeness is some outlier. At this point, it's not the exception, it's the rule. Would you like help turning this into an op-ed, social media post, or video script?
You have to, on the one hand, understand you benefited from racism if you're white. There's no doubt about it. And that has to be addressed. It can't be ignored.
Right.
But also, I didn't personally do it. There's a middle ground there. It's very difficult.
Two things can be true at one time.
And they are both true at one time.
Right.
I'm not personally responsible, but did I benefit? Yes, I'm sure I did. People our age definitely did.
Right.
And so, if we can all agree on things like that, we could then come up with sensible policies.
On this point, I'm with Maher. The only real path forward through the deep ideological divide tearing the country apart is a return to balance and common sense. We need a government that crafts policies to solve the nation's biggest challenges without pandering to one group or alienating another. That means stepping away from performative politics and focusing on practical, inclusive solutions that actually work for everyone, not just the loudest activists in the room. Take racism, for example. It's a complex, deeply rooted issue that demands thoughtful, strategic action, not sweeping, reactionary policies designed for headlines over results. It requires a step-by-step approach to address real systemic problems without creating new ones along the way. Policies like DEI were introduced with good intentions, promising to level the playing field, but in practice, they've brought a wave of unintended consequences that affect jobs, lives, and even public safety. When ideology overtakes practicality, everyone pays the price. If we can't find our way back to rational, results-driven governance, the division we're facing now is only going to deepen. Would you like this reworked into a more persuasive editorial or speech format?
But sometimes on the left, they don't want to acknowledge progress because it interferes with virtue signaling.
Right.
To say, we've come a long way, which we have.
It's okay to say that.
It's okay to say it's
okay.
But somehow you're a better person if you say, but there's work to be done. Of course there's work to be done. There's always work to be done. We're humans. We're on Earth. There's always going to be work to be done. But let's be realistic about where we are.
Bill Maher points out a striking irony. The left, which prides itself on being the vanguard of progress, often seems unwilling to acknowledge just how far we've actually come as a nation. Yes, racism remains a serious and complex issue, and no one is denying that there's still work to do. But pretending we're still living in the Jim Crow era is not only inaccurate, it's deeply misleading. We have made meaningful progress. Acknowledging that progress doesn't mean the fight is over, it just means we're being honest. But here's the problem. Many on the left refuse to recognize that progress because for some, the narrative of perpetual victimhood has become both powerful and profitable. Figures like Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, and Don Lemon have built platforms and in some cases, careers on amplifying racial grievance. And in a media landscape where outrage sells, there's little incentive to shift the narrative toward hope or improvement. Keeping the public in a constant state of indignation serves their interests, even if it means ignoring the evidence of societal advancement. So while real change has happened, this cycle of nonstop outrage is less about justice and more about influence, attention, and money. Until that changes, recognizing progress will continue to be treated as taboo in some circles. Would you like this framed more for debate, publication, or social media?
I've seen focus groups over the past couple of days of Trump voters who still would support him, who say things like, I like Donald Trump because of where he stands. I can't even say it with a straight face. On the issues. Now you tell me, what the fuck does that mean? What does he, what issues? What issues does this guy share with conservatives?
Since you seem unwilling to acknowledge the core issues that resonate with conservatives when it comes to Donald Trump, let me lay them out clearly. Trump has consistently stood for fundamental conservative values, starting with cultural issues that matter deeply to many Americans. He's affirmed the belief in two biological genders, opposed the inclusion of biological men in women's sports, and pushed back against policies that allow men to access women's restrooms. He's also advocated for parental consent laws to protect children from undergoing irreversible gender transitions without oversight. But Trump's impact goes far beyond cultural stances. On national security, he has taken firm action to restore order at the southern border, reversing what many see as dangerously lax policies under Biden and Harris. Under their administration, illegal immigration and crime have surged, but Trump is working to close loopholes, deport violent offenders, and strengthen enforcement to protect American communities. He's also focused on rooting out government waste and holding institutions accountable. Whether it's recovering taxpayer funds lost to fraud in agencies like USAID or demanding transparency and fiscal discipline, Trump's commitment to responsible governance stands in stark contrast to what conservatives view as the mismanagement of the current administration. The list of Trump's achievements and priorities is long and substantive, but I'm not holding my breath waiting for you to recognize any of it. Your refusal to engage with these facts says more about your bias than it does about Trump. When facts don't fit your narrative, you ignore them, and that speaks volumes. Would you like this sharpened for a debate rebuttal, opinion column, or speech excerpt?
Tell me about this, because now when you're an independent now.
Yeah.
So what does that say? That, to me, it says that you think the Republican Party is unsavable.
Unsafe. Oh, no doubt about it.
Because otherwise you would want to stay on, right, and
Right.
reform it, but you think
It can't be saved.
it cannot be saved.
Well, it's official. The Republican Party, under the leadership of Donald Trump, has stormed back into power in dramatic fashion. This wasn't just a win, it was a landslide, a blowout. The kind of victory that none of the so-called electable Republican candidates have come close to delivering in over 2 decades. This wasn't just another election, it was a referendum. A loud, unmistakable rejection of failed policies, weak leadership, and the out-of-touch elites who thought they could silence everyday Americans. But the people spoke, and they spoke with force. They rejected the lies, the corruption, and the empty promises that have become all too familiar from the establishment. So Joe, get used to it. Trump is back, and this isn't just politics as usual, it's a reckoning. The silent majority isn't silent anymore, and they just handed you and your party a brutal reality check. The America First movement is here to stay. And if you thought the last 4 years were turbulent, just wait, because what's coming next is nothing short of a political earthquake. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Want help turning this into a full script or post with visuals and stats to back it up?